Lesbians are a crucial part of the LGBTQIA+ community, so let's talk about their history as a group. Lesbians have been around for so long that there are ancient Greek and ancient Mesopotamian writings about them. Same-sex relationships have been known about for thousands of years. The earliest references to the term lesbian come from Sappho, who lived on the Greek island of Lesbos, Lesbos being where the term lesbian originated from, and, of course, the name Sappho being where the term sapphic originated from as well. Sappho is quite significant in queer and especially lesbian circles due to her writing of sexual attraction to other women. This is some of the earlier, maybe even earliest, writings about women loving women relationships, though some have written of Sappho having affairs with men and stating that her relationships with other women were platonic. This doesn't seem to be very widely believed, however. Greece is not the only place where same-sex relationships between women were common. There are also Japanese poems from the 1st century that suggest lesbian relationships were common in Japan, and even accepted. There are also some references to these relationships within China as well, being encouraged, but they weren't as well documented as male same-sex relationships. There were also references to lesbian relationships within early Arabia, India, and Egypt, sometimes especially those in very early historical references. Just like with male homosexual relationships, lesbians were thought to be women men, kind of women with male spirits within them, as it were. Because, of course, everything needs to have some kind of reference to heterosexuality. It was also less recorded than male homosexual relationships. In a lot of Eastern countries, there are discussions of harems, or harems, however you want to pronounce it. Often, these focused on lesbian relationships, but with these discussions come laws against these relationships, like those in 1400s Thailand, penalizing lesbian relationships between palace women by threat of whipping. However, there are no statements of this punishment ever being used. In the 18th century, there seemed to be a lot of lesbian societies, secretive or not. One in France was named the sect of Anandrins, which included people like Sophie Arnauld and Marie Antoinette. Or in Ireland, Lady Frances Brudenell, the Countess of Newburgh, was reported as a lesbian society leader. In the 20th century, lesbian relationships became a little bit more talked about and visible, but not in a good light. Publications by sexologists like Karl Heinrich Ulrichs and Magnus Hirschfeld made female homosexuality a bit more well-known overall. It was at first described as a medical condition by Freud, leaning on the third sex ideas popularized by Hirschfeld. In the 50s and 60s, lesbian pulp fiction stories were published in the UK and US, often being coded with titles like The Evil Friendship. I would hazard a guess this is why the trope of, "and they were roommates," is so popular, even today. But of course, that's just a theory on my part. Many groups of lesbians lived in communal societies together in the 70s. Often lesbians living together in a romantic relationship has been called Boston marriage, especially while lesbians were contributing to women's rights movements. This Boston marriage title is especially fun considering that Massachusetts was the first US state to legalize gay marriage. Like, Boston, Massachusetts. It's fun. But while we were talking about lesbian stories being published in the UK, lesbianism has never been illegal in the United Kingdom, despite gay men not legally being allowed to have sex in England and Wales until 1967. Though it was proposed in 1921 to ban lesbian relations, this was rejected due to a supposed lack of popularity of lesbian practices. In the late 1960s, a political movement started up with second-wave radical feminists called political lesbianism. This was a way to fight against compulsory heterosexuality and sexism. Political lesbians were those who did not have sex with men, even some viewing men as the enemy. In the 1960s and 70s, there was a lot of concern about family and custody issues, as usually courts wouldn't allow custody to openly gay mothers. As time has gone by, this has changed in some places. Often, lesbian couples consider adoption, fostering children, or using IVF treatments if available in their country, though it's still a hotly debated topic in many countries, so unfortunately it's not a given that this will be possible, even today. After years of protest and a major disruption of the American Psychiatric Association, homosexuality was finally reconsidered as a psychiatric diagnosis. It was in 1973 that this medicalization of homosexuality was removed from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, also known as the DSM. Then, in the 80s, lesbians became a lot more visible in fields like music, sports, and comic books. There were a lot of lesbian films and novels at this time, even with classics like those by Jane Rule being reprinted. In America, lesbians got a lot of publicity as a group because of their assisting men dying of AIDS during the epidemic in the 80s and 90s. It is because of this great contribution that the generally used acronym was changed from GLBT to the now very well-known and well-used LGBT. It's often said that putting lesbians first in the acronym was to be a sort of thanks for all of the hard work put in to assist gay men dying in the epidemic. In East Germany in 1986, the Sunday Club was formed as a way for lesbians to provide educational materials about homosexuality, gather outside state-sanctioned churches, and to acknowledge discrimination faced by homosexuals in general in Germany. A similar group was formed in the USA in New York City in 1992, called the Lesbian Avengers. This was a group that focused on issues vital to lesbian survival and visibility. Now, lesbians are, I'd say, about as popular or well-known as gay men these days. There is popular media with lesbians featured, though it is criticized, like other gay media, for being overly objectifying of lesbian relationships. However, there are definitely claims that lesbians and their accomplishments have been overshadowed by other queer people, or straight up erased by others throughout the course of history. Now, speaking of history, in the LGBT community at large, a divisive topic has been the inclusion of trans people within lesbian circles, since, of course, trans and non-binary people can identify with many sexualities across the board, straight, gay, bi, etc. It's been debated as to if trans women should be accepted within lesbian spaces, given that they are often seen as cis women-only spaces. Many groups are inclusive of trans women within lesbian spaces, as trans women are women. However, there are some usually transphobic, from my understanding, people and groups that are not inclusive of trans women in lesbian spaces. From my understanding, these non-inclusive groups are the minority, however loud they may be, as I find transphobes usually are quite a loud minority. Now, something that a lot of groups of the LGBTQIA+ community have created for themselves have been flags to represent each part of the LGBTQIA+ community. Of course, this includes lesbians, who have had their fair share of flag designs over the years. With that in mind, let's do a bit of a lesbian flag lightning round. The first recognized flag for lesbians was, interestingly, not created by a lesbian, but rather a cis gay man by the name Sean Campbell in 1999. Then it was published in Palm Springs Magazine's Gay and Lesbian Times Pride issue in 2000. The Labras lesbian pride flag was put together as part of a series of flags to represent different communities. The Labras, the battle-axe-looking symbol, was a popular symbol for lesbian feminists since the 70s. This is encased in an upside-down black triangle representing the black triangle used by Nazis to mark lesbians in concentration camps during the Holocaust, not dissimilar to the more popular pink triangle symbol used to mark gay men. The rest of the flag is covered in a medium violet purple, representing Sappho due to the color being referenced in Sappho's poetry. Now, the Labras flag has its problems, so in 2010, lesbian Natalie McRae designed the lipstick lesbian flag. Originally, this was posted on the website This Lesbian Life. This flag is said to represent more feminine lesbians, supposedly based on 7 different shades of lipstick, along with a lipstick mark in the top left corner. Now, this has been criticized as not being inclusive to butch lesbians, and the blog it was originally posted on has been criticized for racist, biphobic, and transphobic rhetorics. To include butch lesbians, another take on this design was attempted. I've seen this being called the pink lesbian flag. However, due to the views of the original creator, there have been more designs yet for a flag to represent the lesbian community. Some other less used designs were created, like one credited to Butch Space and Prince Chaotic on Tumblr in 2017, which take an orange and yellow design to the 7-stripe layout previously used on the lipstick and pink lesbian flags. The one that I've seen the most, and that seems to be most popular these days, is definitely the Sunset Lesbian flag. This was created in 2018 by Emily Gwen, a non-binary lesbian on Tumblr. Because this is the most used flag, at least from what I've seen, I'll go through the meanings of the colors from top to bottom. Orange represents gender nonconformity, then the next is for independence. The pale orange stands for community. The white in the middle is for unique relationships to womanhood. The dark purpley pink is for serenity and peace. Then the darker purple pink is for love and sex. Then the final magenta is representative of femininity. With this video, I just wanted to do a quick overview of lesbian history. Obviously, this is not any sort of an in-depth look at any time, location, or laws affecting lesbian communities in particular. Not being a lesbian myself, I feel that I should leave the more in-depth looks into these matters to that community, as I want to limit the amount I speak for or speak over communities that I'm not a part of. I'll leave some videos in the description that go more in depth into the histories that I've spoken of in this video, alongside the references used for all of this information. If you have any subjects about mental health or LGBTQIA+ topics you'd like to see covered, please let me know down in the comments below. As always, my resources are in the description. Thanks for watching the OCD Enby. Stay safe out there.